Welcome back, I'm Kim Bailey and this is Make It Floral for Floral Art Online. What we're working on is a series of videos that match up with a series of workshops that I run over 20 weeks for absolute beginners, just to show you how some techniques can be adapted and used all around your home or your workplace or your party time, just so that you can enhance your creativity by knowing the basics about some very simple techniques to do all sorts of things. So today we're looking at coasters, drink coasters, plant coasters, so something to put underneath something else. So coasters and drink glass markers. So the first of our coasters that we're going to make is a larger size that might be suitable for under a mug or under a small pot plant, something like that. And it's very simple mesh weaving technique. So these are ones that have been made for about 3 or 4 weeks now. And so you can see that the plant material has started to dry out. But we'll look at how we do that, and you might like that particular look as it dries out. This is banana leaf that I've used here, and you might like, with the gap ones, to actually add something else into it once it's dried to this point. It won't dry much more than it is now, it won't shrink much more than it has now. So you could start to weave some other things into it if you wanted to, or you could leave it open like that. It's quite attractive like that. So what we start with is a bit of mesh. This is a 5 square by 5 square. And we're going to use some banana leaf. Now I want to talk to you about the banana leaf. This is some that has been now cut for probably 5 weeks. Came off a tree that got cut down, was probably about 10 days, nearly 2 weeks before I actually got the leaf on the stem. And we used it for a workshop that day, and then when I brought it back home I cut it up. And what you then do with it is you cut it into the strips that you want to use, and you put it in the freezer. So this is straight out of the freezer, so it's still a bit cool, but what happens is that freezing process breaks down the cells, so it makes it much more pliable to use. Don't have to wait for it to defrost, because as soon as you touch it with your hands it will start to become pliable once again, and you can use it. And it's quite nice to work with when in summer, because they're nice and cool to work with. And I know the group that I had in the workshop more recently were talking about how lovely it was to touch, because it was so cool. But it warms up quickly enough. As you can see, this one, even in the freezer, has started to dry up. I think because I've had it in and out of the freezer half a dozen times, so it's been defrosted and dried out a little bit before it's gone back into the freezer. I don't mind that though, it gives you nice coloration on it. I cut the strips quite thick when I first cut them up, so that I could thin them down to use them as I wanted to. You could use long strips for this particular technique, or you could use the shorter ones. I've only got the shorter ones left, so that's what we're going to have to use. And I will move this turntable out of the way so that you can see more clearly what I'm doing on the black, which is a little bit dirty, so it will. So it's basically a weaving technique under an over weaving technique. You go all in one direction first, or if you've got the short pieces like this, you could do sections at a time. One is obviously wider than the squares I've got, so I won't use that one, because I don't want to just cut them down at the moment. What you do need to do, or what I suggest you do, is always leave a little bit at the end here so that you can tuck it under. You'll see on this one where they've been tucked under, and I haven't cut them so that I could show you how that looks when it's dried, and then you would just trim them back. So I'll say with this one we'll just trim him back, and so you don't see it, and so it sits nicely under the other weave. You can take them either direction, it doesn't matter. So here's another one that's ready to be trimmed. And so there, that's nice and trimmed and done. You can do it when you first weave it. You can leave them to dry a little bit to see how much they shrink, because sometimes they'll shrink back. You can see with some of them they've shrunk back underneath the weave, and so I don't have to trim them. That one's bent the other way. And we'll stick him under. You could glue them. If you waited till they dried before you were gluing, you can just use a PVA glue. If you wanted to glue them when they're wet, then you might need to use a florist glue, and I'll actually wet that and bend it back down underneath. Now, so there's another one there. Whoop. And so we have on this one, because of the way I finished it across the edge here, there is an up and a down side. But if you were just weaving it flat to finish it off, then it wouldn't matter if it was this way, it wouldn't matter which side was up or down. So to the weaving technique, very simply, under and over. As I said, leave yourself a little bit of leaf material to fold over. And because I'm using the short lengths, I will, she said, thinking to herself, I'll just do this one side to show you. Some of them are more frozen than others. Now you'll see that I've actually, I'm alternating whether I go under or over on the sides as well, so I get a nice weave pattern here. And in fact, you could leave it like that. You wouldn't necessarily have to put the locking row down the other way till you see how you are faring with it. And you might like to see that the metal pattern through it. That's quite a nice finish on it. If you've got your leaf material that's going to fill those gaps completely. And that will obviously shrink. And so then if we were looking to finish the ends, we'd fold them back over. But what we might do is just leave those, and I'll show you doing the strips in the other direction. Losing my words today. And so when you're going this way, the trick is to ensure that you're working with the leaf as well as with the wire. So here I've gone under the wire, I'm going over the foliage, and I could either go under and then come back over, or I can just go over both the foliage and the next wire and under the next foliage, and then bring it out the other side of the foliage or the other side of the wire, whatever you feel comfortable doing, and then we bring it back in. There, and because we've gone over this foliage, we're going under this one. Now it will feel loose to you. And what we do with that one is just fold it under, and what you'll find when you're doing this, if you've got a long enough length here, this is not quite long enough, but if you fold that one under there and under that metal loop, that will lock it there, and then you can bring this one and lock it in under the one that you've just put through. So because we've gone this vertical goes over this foliage, so the next one beside it will be under, so we go that way. And same here, because our vertical is under, we need to go over on this one. So it's just that alternating weave, like a basket weave. Once again, I use the wire mesh to lock in the foliage a little bit better for me while I'm putting it together, and then I can come back and adjust it if I need to. And so that's how it works. And so you get that nice mesh pattern. Now, as I said, it won't stay that filled out because these will dry out and shrink, but they're wide enough that they will shrink to that size, which I find quite attractive. And it's quite soft to touch. It's not going to scratch your tabletops because it's got so much of the soft plant material. Now, if we talk about the edges, because this mesh has cut edges, they just get folded up with your pliers to a 90-degree angle, or you can cut them off if you want to, if you don't want to decorate the edges. And so we have our little prongs here now. They can either be used to decorate by rolling the ends up, as I've done with these ones, and just those were just the long lengths that I had, and I've wound them on, and you just spear them onto that point like that. You can just fold them over one another. You can fold them across the corners. That part of finishing off, very much up to you. So here's one with the narrower ones where I've actually didn't have enough in the lengths to put it on, so I've just rolled tiny little offcut strips and put them onto the wires and then bent the wire down. The beauty of having things that you pierce onto the corners, the wire like that, is that you can change the way it looks. So if you were doing it for a party or a celebration, you could have berries or something that fitted in with the theme of what you're doing. You could string feathers along, all sorts of things, and then when that celebration is over, you pull them off and you've still got your basic coaster, and you can decorate it for something else another time. So there is our first coaster for our Make It Floral workshop, and a little bit of a trick about what to do with banana leaf if you want to keep it for a while to use it. Cut it into the strips of the sizes that you want to use, into a bag in the freezer, and you can take it in and out. As I said, these ones have been around for about 6 weeks now. They have been in and out of the freezer, so they've been defrosted probably 3 times over and been used over a 2 to 4 hour series. So well and truly defrosted and then back in, which is why they're starting to dry out a little bit, because they dry out obviously in those sessions and then go back into the freezer. But still gives you a lovely coloration to use in your mesh. Our first coaster for Make It Floral and Floral Art Online. Our second coaster uses some yucca rope. Now, if you haven't worked through that exercise with me, I will put the link in the description of how to work out to do the yucca rope. It's the same as in any foliage roping technique. This is one single leaf of the yucca, so you get a length that is about that long out of one leaf, so plenty for one single coaster. And what we're going to do with it is very much a tatami technique of making it into a spiral, so it's a round coaster for your glasses or mugs or whatever else it is. And with this, you can use either 3 or 4 bits of paper covered wire to give you the securing arms for the tatami. I'll just trim this off a little bit as the start. I'm going to use 3. So our paper covered wire in half, so that you've got the two arms to work with. So we've got our 3 pieces of paper covered wire, and we secure them around one end, one knot end, and just a twist. And we just need to make sure that they're going in different directions so that we can secure the spiral. And then it's a matter of bringing the rope in between the 2 pieces of wire. And I would suggest a single twist around there to secure it, because otherwise you get too big a gap. This one has 2 twists, and so you can see the gap that has opened up between those. And obviously this is dried out a little bit more than the rope that I'm using. This rope is about a week old, so it has dried out a little bit because I didn't want it to be too fresh, because then you don't get the same idea of the shrinkage that will happen. And so we just continue with that spiral. So continuing through the 3. With one twist to hold it in place as we go around. I know it's a little bit hard for you to see, but I will change the camera angle shortly so that you can look over the top of my hands and see what I'm doing. So we've got the first round secured, so I'm going to change the camera angle now so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So in between the 2 wires, and a single twist. In between the wires, single twist. Might look like I'm doing 2, but I'm just pinching with one in one movement and then doing the twist. That's my excuse. No, not an excuse. It's my justification. Explanation. One of those Asian words. You could do this with any rope, any twisted plant material. And I just have a lot of yucca leaves to use up at the moment. One of the other foliage ropes that I have made has been with the dead agapanthus leaves, so the ones that fall off the plant and are underneath the plant, the sort of browny and sometimes mottled brown colours. And those, because they're dry, obviously you need to just wet them or have them in a bucket of water as you're working with them to make the rope. But they make such an attractive rope and anything else that you use the rope for, because they have this variety of colours. So these are just starting to dry out, so they're giving me that same sort of look, of interesting look. And so when we get to finish it off, we'll just twist that in. Now if you wanted to, you could bind that back into the mat itself, but I'm quite happy to leave it as an end. And with the wire, obviously twist it off till you're happy it's secure, then cut it. and bind it back into itself so that that becomes the bottom. Pliers might need to be sharpened. Perhaps they have been used for things other than wire, like the scissors. But anyway, you get that in the big jobs. And fold it in. So there we have our coaster made from the single leaf of a yucca using the tatami technique. Well, the third item for this workshop is our wine glass marker, or yes, so a stemmed glass marker. I won't just say wine, a stemmed glass marker. So for that you will need a cork, round. Now this is a quarter of a standard cork, a proper cork, not the plastic ones. So a quarter of a cork, a paper clip, an eye screw, a little bit of a pearl-headed pin, and some plant material to attach to your wine marker. So what we do first of all is put the screw into the cork. So we've got the ring to hold it. With our paper clip, open it up. Thread it through and then just bind off the ends a little bit. Remember that the stems of wine glasses can vary in size, so I would suggest that to start with you just roll over the edges once, and remember we want to be able to get it around the wine glass and then lock into itself so it stays there like that. And then we just need to decorate it, and I've chosen to do it with the fresh plant material so that I can mix and match it for when I go out. So this is just some oregano that I've picked this morning, and some lavender that was picked a little while ago. I would suggest that you pin these items before you put them into the cork. So join all of your plant, if you're using fresh plant material, join it all together first, and then it's just pinning it on. It's a little bit too dry, the lavender, but so you could glue it on if you didn't want to chop and change it. You could glue it on. So very much like, you know, perhaps you could think about it if you were doing it for a wedding or a party that you had it in a similar vein to the other wearable floral art or floral designs that people are wearing. But that's our very simple wine glass marker, the third part of our workshop on making coasters. I'm Kim Bailey, this is Floral Art Online, and this is the Make It Floral workshop series.